Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Elementary. So in this episode, we pick up right where last week's episode left off. In fact, Shinwell is dead. I pretty much figured he was, but there was a part of me I think was still hoping that he wasn't. But I was like, nope, he was dead. In fact, turns out he was actually stabbed in the back. Which kind of puts out the point, like, it had to be someone that he knew, because it's like, we real trained him not to turn his back on a stranger, stuff like that. So the person he let in had to be someone that he knew. That person we end up finding out much later on is Tall Boy. But basically, Joan is like, she's not going to let this stop. It's like, she's not sad, you know, she's not mad at herself. Well, she's not like upset about like herself and all of this. I was like, because, you know, Sherlock's like, you don't have any reason to blame yourself for this, you know. Shinwell was on this path long before we met him, and the fact of the matter is that, you know, he knew the consequences of doing what he was doing, that eventually it would lead him down this path. Even though Sherlock and him didn't see eye to eye, and he looked at it as a criminal, he knows, like, it's still not fair, especially because, you know, even though they didn't see eye to eye, he still recognizes how close Shinwell and Joan were. But then Joan's like, no, I'm mad. Because the fact of the matter is, even if we catch the person who killed Shinwell, what does that mean? Because he was still following orders. We need to take down this group. And so Sherlock's like, so are you sure about this? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, well, rest well, because we're going to war with one of the most dangerous gangs around. So this is basically them trying to take down SBK. We end up learning more about SBK, that its leader is a guy named Bonzi. And he's no idiot. Like, basically, there's like an intricate system to how they handle and pass along messages. It's like through web page messages. It's because of the pictures he ended up using, because he uses like memes as a means of getting coded messages across. He uses a device known as Enigma. It's like basically like a way to kind of decode, like put your messages in a code or whatever. He also uses it by like writing like how you decipher, like the message itself is written as the picture title. So it's like, it's a very complex system. It's just like, you know, if it wasn't used for such irreputable means, like, you know, if he wasn't using it for crime purposes, it's like you'd be very impressed on how he runs his operations and stuff like that. Like I said, if they weren't just, you know, for killing and stealing and hurting and selling drugs, you know, stuff like that. So, but there was actually a point in the episode, like, where they actually had a sit down with Bonzi. I call him Bonzi. I think, you know, whatever. Bonzi. They sat down and had a talk with him because he wanted to come. He's like, oh yeah, I know you're investigating Shinwell's murder and everything. Oh yeah, the person who did, Tall Boy. Evidence is here, and it's like, Joan's like, I know exactly what you're doing. It's like, basically, like, she got up in his face. It's like, yo, we're not going to fall for that. I don't care who you're trying to point the finger at. We know the orders came from you. We will see you come to justice. We will, you know, you will be behind bars. And it's like, whoa. Joan ain't backing down, because it's like, I don't think you've ever seen Joan really this fired up before when it came to a case. I mean, she's been fired up before, but not to this extent, because it's directly related to someone that she cares about deeply, you know, like, because she had faith in Shinwell, because she believed in what he was doing. That's why she's doing this now, because it's like, if we just let it in with Shinwell, that means this whole thing dies for him. But he put so much time and effort. He was trying to make up for the past, do the right thing, and help people by putting away the SBK. And, you know, I mean, it never came up, but let's not forget he has a daughter out there who grew up never knowing. I mean, granted, she kind of kept him at a distance. I'm very curious to find out about that, though, when it's all said and done. Like, what would his family think? You know, because, like, because I think Joan is going to tell her, as well as his aunt, not his aunt, but his daughter's aunt, tell her the truth of, like, yeah, like, Shinwell, he was actually working undercover. He was trying to, you know, he was being a confidential informant to help take down his game. And it seems like that might be easily where, like, you know, Joan would take it, just to make people realize, oh, Shinwell was 100% a bad guy. When he came out, he was trying to help out with everything, you know, trying to take down his old gang and everything. Because it's like, because I'm sure, like, right now, like, his family would just look at, well, that's what happened when he got mixed up in that world. It's like, no, he got mixed up in that world to do a good thing. So, but, Joan ends up talking to Tall Boy later on and brings it up. It's like, yeah, you want to know how we found you? It's like, oh, you want to tell me one of my boys sold me? I was like, not your boys, your boss sold you. And even Tall Boy was like, wait, what? Like, he had a look on his face. I was like, oh, that caught me by surprise. I was like, I was expecting them, like, Bonzi to have called him up and been like, yo, we need you to take the fall for this, which obviously he gladly would have, but you still saw the shock in his eye, like, wait, you were you're gonna sell me out like that? It's like, yeah, I admitted to the crime and everything, but for them to actually be the one, I was going to take the fall for the crime if it ever came back. That's what the whole point of me doing it. But it's like, why? You know, like, and just that look on his face. I mean, like I said, he didn't turn on them, but I still think Joan still says, like, you know, she can't talk to Tall Boy because Tall Boy was friends with Shinwell, no matter how much, like, Shinwell, you know, Shinwell was basically in this situation. She even makes the comparison. It's like, Shinwell, when he ended up having to kill his best friend, it still weighed on him, even after all these years and everything. And it's like, I can easily tell that this is going to weigh on you too, so try and do the right thing, though he's not going to, because it's like, yo, I have my own family situation, and, like, you know, the SBK was the only family I've ever had and known, so I'm never going to betray them. So there's even a point where, Joan had figured out the whole messaging system and everything, because it was kind of interesting, because it was like a flip on the normal, because you had Sherlock sleeping in late, and he comes out, like, Joan is busy at work. He's like, yo, you're wearing the same clothes. She's like, yep, I never went to sleep last night. It's like, huh, interesting. She ended up figuring out the system and everything. There was kind of a bust put in play, but it's like, nope, it didn't work out because they saw it coming. Bonzi deleted the page. Basically, the guys that they kind of put that sting on were actually legitimately buying oranges, even though oranges are supposed to be like their code for like the amount of drugs they're selling or whatever. So once again, proving how smart Bonzi is. Because in this episode, we also got introduced to his half brother, Tyus, which it turns out, like, yeah, Bonzi, because especially when you met him and everything, like, you know, Sherlock was kind of like, yeah, he doesn't seem like, you know, I think it was Joan who brought it up as a fact matter. He didn't seem like the intelligent guy that runs this organization. And it's like, no, because the one that actually runs the organization is Tyus, because he's the businessman and everything. And, like, he tries to undersell himself. It's like, oh, yeah, my brother, he's kind of smart and everything. Like, oh, he's a real smart one, a lot smarter than people give him credit for. And it's like, the entire time, it's like, in retrospect, it's like, now that I'm looking back on it, it's like, all that was you doing is, like, diverting attention away from yourself. Like, obviously, you're not going to pretend to be the super smart one, because, you know, because obviously, like, because he made it seem like him and Bonzi were at odds. They had, like, a public dispute ending with Bonzi putting him in a hospital with, like, a dislocated jaw or something like that after Bonzi hit him or something. But it's like, that was all theatrics to kind of make it, you know, less likely for people to believe, oh, they're partners and everything, especially because he's all got a legitimate business and everything. Because basically, they ended up tying some crimes from the past to Tyus's business, because some certain victims, their names were mentioned in some of the messages. They were people that were kind of, some were at least rivals to Tyus's business. So it's like he was taking out the competition and everything. But there was one name in particular. There was a lady named Carol Logan, I think was her name. Wasn't by Tyus's orders, because, like, Sherlock had noticed something. Like, obviously the other names, he was very, like, Tyus was very still, calm, cool, and collected. But there's something kind of happened when Carol's name was brought up. He kind of shifted a little, just kind of like a little unease that Sherlock picked up on. And it's like, oh, the reason why is because he has some kind of connection to it. At the very least, it's like, she was some bank teller, so why would he go out of his way to kill her? What would be the benefit to his own business and everything like that? The reason is because Bonzi's the one that killed her and did everything, and he had the boys, you know, SBK, cover up the crime and everything. So that's why it kind of bothers Tyus a little bit, because because he is the brains of the operation, so he's the one that decides how things kind of operate, and that was kind of a spur of the moment type of thing, and so his brother made a big mess of it, so that's why it made him uneasy, because, like, oh, stuff could be trailed back to his brother. And they're about to go, you know, Bell's with some other cops, and they're about to go to Bonzi's place. I keep doing that. But it turns out he took some drugs and he started bleeding and he's slowly dying. They basically later on to find out, like, he's in a vegetative state. It's like his brother did that to him just so he wouldn't talk, or put him in a position to get arrested or whatever. Like, he was a loose end and everything. And they're even bringing it up to him. It's like, oh, so how does it feel if you're faking it with your mom? Like, oh, you're so distraught and everything. It's like, I mean, the fact of the matter is you're not even distraught. You look pretty cool, calm, and collected considering your brother's condition. It's like, the fact of the matter is, growing up, you lose a lot of people. It's like, we know that what you really are. And he's like, basically like, now, the fact that you bring up, you know exactly what I am. So what you see, what I did to possibly your friend Shinwell and what I did to my own brother. I'd like you to think about what that means I could do for you. At that point, being like, he can threaten him like that because it's not like they can do anything about it because there's no evidence to really tie him to everything. Like, he's kept a good means of, like, making sure to stay out of the limelight with this situation to kind of cover his tracks pretty well. So, I mean, granted, I think even though he's kind of the head of the organization, like, if the other people at SPK found out that I mean, like, how many people actually think Bonzi is the one who runs things, or does everyone know that Tyus runs things? Or was it only Bonzi that knew that? So when it's all said and done, like, will they be able to turn SBK against Tyus? It's like, yo, you know, take Tallboy, for example. You realize that the person that you wanted to take a fall for, Bonzi, yeah, he's dead now. You know who killed him? His brother. Or maybe get SBK to be like, yo, this guy took out the guy that's your leader and everything. But it's like I said, that comes down to whether or not everyone knows Tyus as the leader, so... Very interesting turn of events. Wasn't expecting that, like, turn, because I was like, oh yeah, his brother, his half brother is legitimate. It's like, but then this time when I was like, nope, wow, he's the real brains of this operation and everything. So, because the question I'm still asking myself though is, how did Tyus know about Shinwell? Shinwell was good at covering his tracks and everything, but how did he find out? I mean, obviously the Bonsai situation, it was like Bonzi. I keep doing that. Sorry. But the Bonzi situation is like, it makes sense because like they went questioning him about, you know, those murders, and that included Carol. So obviously at that point he's like, yep, they might trail this back to Bonzi. I got to get rid of this. So I'm like, that I can understand, but it's like, how did he know about Shinwell? Did he have someone tip him off? I can't help it because I'm very suspicious, because it's like, I always expect to turn around and find a dirty cop, but it's like Guzman. Are we going to end up finding out that he's kind of on Tyus's payroll or something like that? I don't know. Like, I like to think, like, obviously nothing's come up so far, so I mean, not unless Guzman was only recently gotten to. I don't know. It's like, how would you find out about Shinwell? Not unless they kept a good, close eye on him or something like that. I don't know. I mean, maybe we'll find out in the next episode. But kind of tying into this storyline is Sherlock's side of the story, which he kind of brought up something interesting at a meeting he went to. He ended up talking about Shinwell's whole situation, kind of put his own situation in perspective. It's like, Shinwell, you know, it wasn't addicted, you know, to drugs like Sherlock was, but obviously he still had a rough situation that he was trying to bounce back from, trying to recuperate from. And it's like, he's like, Shinwell just didn't try hard enough, because he's like, Shinwell still kind of fell in a, like, I guess I don't know how to really phrase it the way Sherlock wanted it to sound. Like, it's hard to say, like, was he saying that, you know, Shinwell was kind of, even with all his efforts, it still didn't work out in the end? Is that what he meant, like, not trying hard enough? Or did he mean that Shinwell was still kind of falling into that world? Even though he's trying to do this right thing, he still kind of fell back into old habits or something like that? Which is like, I didn't see that per se. I still don't see that. Like, but I mean, it's really hard to say like exactly what Sherlock meant. I want to say it was kind of the first one, that even when it was all said and done, he still couldn't do what he wanted to do, because, you know, and it kind of made Sherlock think like, hey, I need to try harder in every aspect thing of I do, because he ends up talking to this lady, and he ends up talking about a case, which I assume is from his past. How far in the past? I don't know. Basically, it's about a boy named Luke killing this woman named Miriam. I think it was his wife, I think. But Luke kept saying like, it wasn't me. But recently he was in jail and he ended up killing himself, still confessing in a note he didn't do it. But Sherlock kind of thinks like, because basically back then he convinced the detective to arrest Luke, even though Sherlock himself had not looked into the case much. He had not investigated. He hadn't talked to witnesses and stuff like that. You know, it was all based on, like, I guess, seeing the conversation with Luke. So it makes you wonder, at what point in time was this case taking place? Was it during kind of, you know, Sherlock's rough times? You know, was he more high back then? Was this kind of his early stages of investigation? I mean, it seems like obviously it's located in New York, so I want to say it's probably the whole situation. It probably happened sometime before he met up with Joan, or even started working with the, you know, Bell and Captain Gregson. So probably even before then. So, but it seems like it was one of those things where it's like Sherlock regrets it, because it's like, yeah, I wasn't the good detective that I am now. You know, I would have handled things a lot better, but who I was then was very naive and idiotic. So that's how I feel about it. He ends up bringing it up to the lady, because she ends up coming to the station and everything. And he's like, yeah, the fact of the matter is he's changed from this swing set he's sitting on and everything. Seems like it might have been a murder weapon and stuff like that. He ends up telling her, it's like, yeah, I told you not to come here. And then once again, at the end of it, he's like, don't ever come here again. So it's like, why are you being like that towards her? And then later on, like, he ends up finding out, because he ends up contacting one of his colleagues, another cop, to actually help him with the he might be from something else. I can't place it quite. I want to say he might have been from Daredevil season 1. He was one of the dirty cops in season 1. I think he's actually the one that kind of made it out of it okay, if I remember correctly. I think that's him. It's kind of interesting, but nevertheless, he ends up bringing up, yeah, like the chains, but it seems like someone stole it. And the guy's like, are you kidding me? He's like, what are you talking about? I got this message from you. We already got the chains and everything. It's like, oh, it says it was from you and everything. I just assumed you changed your number or something. So Sherlock pretended like he didn't know who the message was from, but it was from that lady. He's like, please stop interfering with everything. And she's like, well, I will the moment you stop ignoring me. She's like, he's like, is that a threat? And she's like, no, it's not a threat. It's a promise when it comes from someone that loves you. And it's like, wait, what? What does that mean? Who are you? Are you someone from... It sounds like she had a bit of an accent, but I don't know if I was imagining that or not. So it's like, is she someone from his London days? His Scotland Yard days in particular? Could she be someone from back then? Could she be a fiance that he just kind of up and abandoned? Like, the fact is that that's a thing. Could she be a sister that he never knew about? Kind of like the whole Jones situation. Like, who is she? And why is she popping up now? And why is she interfering with Sherlock's life? Is she trying to get Sherlock to come back with her or something like that? Could she be like in a sense, I mean, like, could she be like another child? Maybe on his mom, maybe his mom ended up having an affair or something, or maybe his dad. Which to me, I don't know. It seems like for his dad, that seems more likely than his mom. I mean, just to be fair, just considering who Moreland is, it's just like, I don't know, man. It's hard to ever see him as like a loving person. So at the same time, seeing him as faithful, especially when he was like last season when he kind of threw it in Sherlock's face about his mom's drug addictions and stuff like that. I don't know. I'm very curious to find out who this lady is and what she wants with Sherlock, why she's kind of interfering. I mean, she's helping and everything. I mean, something that also crossing my mind is, what if she's actually a previous Kelly and Joan? What if she was a colleague, a protege that he had before that he kind of just abandoned because it's like maybe she crossed the lines and Sherlock wasn't down for that, and maybe that's what this is all about? That was kind of a possibility running through my head. Like, I mean, honestly, I don't know. We just have to wait till the next episode to find out, because next week's episode is the season finale, which is crazy to me to think about it, but it's like, yeah, the season finale is already here. So I'm very curious to see how this whole SVK situation goes about, and who this lady is. Hope we get, some resolutions and answers next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.